Back now to our Kelly File investigation, Ebola in America. That was the president on Thursday night defending the decision not to impose any kind of travel ban, despite growing calls from some doctors, a range of political leaders, and what is now a big majority of the American public. So why the opposition to the idea? Joining me now, Dr. Ben Carson, who's the former director of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins Hospital and a Fox News contributor, and Kristen Powers, who's a columnist for USA Today and a Fox News contributor. And we begin with Dr. Carson. Doctor, good to see you tonight. And so, on the travel ban, let me ask you this. So far, we have one person who came into the United States from Liberia with Ebola. Is it an overreaction to say we need to ban all travel from these 3 affected countries?
No, it's not an overreaction at all. It's actually common sense and logic. Why would you bring something dangerous in here or let something dangerous come into our country on purpose? Why have 22 other countries decided to ban it? Why have other African countries put up an isolation wall? Are we the only ones who are so wise and everybody else is a fool? I don't think that's the case.
How is this broken down into a weird partisan dispute? I mean, it's strange to watch how many conservative Republicans want the travel ban and many liberal Democrats don't. I mean, it just seems sort of weird that this has turned into a partisan issue. Why is that, do you think?
Well, there's so many things that we make into partisan issues now that are not partisan at all. They're things that affect all of us, but there seems to be this bandwagon effect, and that people see a person as their leader and they jump on that bandwagon without investing any intellectual thought into this at all. And all you'd have to do is ask yourself, if one of your loved ones was in proximity to somebody who had come from one of these countries, would you be comfortable? Would you be comfortable bringing that person in and putting them in proximity with your loved one? Let that be your guide.
You know, when I interviewed Dr. Frieden earlier this week, he said the problem is, even if you instituted the ban and then you had charter flights taking doctors and health workers in and out, it would lower the flow of traffic of well-meaning people, you know, who wanted to help the folks in Africa. And he thinks that that would create an expansion of the disease over there. He thinks even a limited travel ban would really lead to an expansion of Ebola in Africa, which he says is bad for us.
Well, one of the things that I've been saying for several weeks now is, you know, let's get rid of the foolish arguments and let's think about this logically. We have an epicenter in Western Africa of an incredibly deadly disease. We need to get together, international coalition, but we don't want to wait. We need to move our forces in there, and we need to not only contain it, but we need to eradicate it there. If we do not, and it spreads across that continent and into the Middle East, and then subsequently into South and Central America, it doesn't matter how wonderful the protocols are that we have from CDC. Doesn't matter how much our experts know. We're going to be inundated with cases. We have to think about the worst case scenario.
What do you make of the president putting a political operative now in the position of effectively the Ebola czar?
Well, we certainly have enough czars already. There's nothing in our Constitution that allows for the appointment of czars, and we've got a Secretary of Health and Human Services. We've got a head of the NIH, head of the CDC. This is absolute political nonsense.
Dr. Carson, good to see you.
You too. Thank you.
Kristen Powers also with me, as I mentioned. Kirsten, the argument in favor of the ban that is arguably the most persuasive is that you look at countries like Senegal and Nigeria, which are about to be declared Ebola-free by world officials after instituting the ban. And they say that's evidence that the ban, while controversial, works.
Well, I think there were a lot of other things that Nigeria did, though. I mean, they were so aggressive in terms of containing it, and there's probably a lot that we could learn from them. They met with did something like 30,000 face-to-face interviews where they figured out any person who could potentially come in contact. They actually met with them to make sure that they were not sick. They weren't doing what our CDC did, which was
go ahead
on
and
a
get on the
phone
plane.
call. It's like, oh, you don't have a high enough, fever, so go ahead and go. So they treated it with the seriousness that I think it needed to be treated with. So I don't know if maybe the ban on flying in is just a piece of that.
That raises an interesting issue, because this is what I was trying to talk to Dr. Frieden about, which is I get his concern about the bigger Ebola grows in West Africa, the less safe we are, because more people could potentially try to come over. But now that we've seen the holes in our system here, well-meaning people running it, though they may be, there are some serious holes. Why can't we just, until we patch those up, put a temporary ban in place?
Well, I think I agree with what the president said. If that will actually help the situation, then that's what we should do. I just don't. I think when you hear people who are experts in infectious diseases saying, no, that's actually going to make things worse, because people are going to start going into countries in different ways. They won't fly in. They'll find another way to get in.
Because they're so determined to come to America.
Yeah, now we know who's coming in, so we can see them. It would completely change the dynamics. So I think that's something to consider. You have to consider that European countries, all the European countries have not banned flights, so you'd have to get them to agree to ban flights because they're coming through Europe. There are not direct flights to the United States from
individual
Liberia.
by individual, if you denied visas to Liberians and folks who had passports from these countries, that might be a way of getting after the individuals.
So I think you have to do a balancing, and you have to decide. You don't agree with the experts, the infectious disease experts, and we're willing to just do a ban to make us feel better.
People think the infectious disease doctors are bleeding hearts who just, they just want to help the West Africans, and they think it's a calculated risk, and they'll risk some Americans to help these thousands of people over there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that. I don't think it necessarily has to be a bleeding heart situation. I mean, there is the issue of also getting the aid to them, and I know people have said, well, they can just charter flights, but I don't know who's paying for these chartered flights. I mean, chartered flights are very expensive, and so aid workers do need to get in and out, and that is a consideration for them as well. All that said, I predict that there probably will be a ban on flights, don't you think?
Because of politics?
I think of political politics, I think, and if you look at President Obama's trajectory, he always has a delay between when he always puts a stake in the ground that this is what he's doing, and then he eventually gets and then he gets then he starts to saying, well, maybe, and then he moves to the point of doing it. So I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up with a ban.
If the ban is coming, especially if we see another case here and public pressure continues to mount. Great to see you.
Good being here.
Thank you.